We just finished our discussion of mitosis, and so it's appropriate that we spend some time discussing cancer at this particular point. Cancer is closely related to mitosis, and cancer in a nutshell is this. It's a cell of an organism's body that has undergone damage to the DNA that causes it to lose control of the cell cycle. And so this means that it divides over and over and over again, forming this thing that we call a tumor. So a tumor can come in different forms. A benign tumor has no effect on the surrounding tissues. A malignant tumor invades the surrounding tissues, and a tumor can undergo metastasis. Metastasis occurs when some cells break off of a tumor and travel either via the blood or via lymph, L-Y-M-P-H, another fluid in your body. And they travel to a new location, and they anchor and they start growing there. And so cancer, of course, is a big deal and a very scary and very pervasive health problem. And so cancer typically doesn't occur. It's not the normal situation, because normally cells undergo these things that we call checkpoints in the cell cycle. And so we talked about that cell cycle previously, and we saw that when the cell gets to a certain point in the cell cycle, actually we didn't see this, but we want to say now that as the cell goes through the cell cycle, there are these checkpoints, and if everything is okay in the cell is allowed to proceed. But if there is damage or abnormal characteristics to the cell, then it's halted at those checkpoints. And when it's halted, then something called apoptosis occurs. Apoptosis is known as programmed cell death. And so this is an orderly mechanism by which the cell shuts up, it closes up shop, so to speak, takes all its parts, breaks them down to be recycled, and then just ceases to exist. And so apoptosis is what should happen to a cell once damage occurs to the DNA. But sometimes that doesn't occur, and so cancer occurs as a result of that. Interestingly, unfortunately, there's a strong link between genetics and cancer. Over half of all human cancers are tied to a particular gene that codes for what's called a tumor suppressor protein. And so a tumor suppressor protein is involved in causing cells to go through this process of apoptosis. And so you can understand then that in this case, if that tumor suppressor protein is not present, then the programmed cell death wouldn't happen, and it's likely that cancer could develop as a result of that. P53, P lowercase p 53, which is discussed in your text, is the tumor suppressor protein that over half of all human cancers are tied to. Now, your book also discusses genes such as BRCA. BRCA is that gene that BRCA1 is the gene that Angelina Jolie carried and that caused her to have that radical procedure done very recently. BRCA1 is a gene that greatly increases the risk of developing breast cancer. And so unfortunately there's a very strong link between genes and the development of cancer.